New York, the Empire State, home to the Statue of Liberty, Times Square, and the bright lights of Broadway. But beneath the concrete jungle of Manhattan, beyond the rolling hills of the Hudson Valley, and hidden under the pristine waters of the Finger Lakes, lie secrets that would make even the most seasoned New Yorkers stop dead in their tracks. Ancient mysteries so profound, so bewildering, that they challenge everything we thought we knew about the people who walked this land thousands of years before the first Dutch settler ever set foot on Manhattan Island. From massive stone walls lying silent beneath the Hudson River to entire civilizations that vanished without leaving so much as a whisper in the wind. These aren't tall tales spun by campfire storytellers upstate. These are real archaeological discoveries, documented by scientists, historians, and researchers who've spent their lives digging through New York's hidden past. Mysteries that make you wonder, what else is buried beneath our feet? What other secrets are waiting in the Adirondacks, in the depths of our Great Lakes, or right here under the streets of the five boroughs? Today, we're taking you on a journey through 5 of New York's most mind-bending ancient mysteries. Stories so incredible that by the end of this video, you'll never look at the Empire State the same way again. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. The revolutionary gunboat under Ground Zero. September 11, 2001, changed New York forever. But during the massive reconstruction effort at Ground Zero, workers uncovered something that changed our understanding of Manhattan's history just as dramatically. 22 feet beneath the World Trade Center site, buried under centuries of landfill and urban development, lay the wooden remains of a Revolutionary War-era gunboat. Construction crews were digging foundations for new buildings at one of the most closely watched construction sites in American history. Suddenly, somebody's shovel hits something that shouldn't be there. Something old. Really old. What emerged from that hole was a piece of American history that nobody saw coming. A 30-foot-long wooden vessel, built around 1775, right in the thick of the Revolutionary War. This wasn't some little rowboat or fishing skiff. This was an honest-to-goodness gunboat, built for war, armed for battle, and somehow buried beneath the heart of Manhattan's financial district. The boat's construction tells a story that gives you chills. Hand-hewn oak planks, held together with iron nails and wooden pegs, built using techniques that haven't changed much since the days when New York was still called New Amsterdam. The wood was so well preserved by the waterlogged soil that researchers could still see the marks left by the shipbuilders' tools. But here's the million-dollar question that's been eating at historians ever since. How did a Revolutionary War gunboat end up buried beneath what would become the World Trade Center? Think about the geography of Manhattan in 1775. The island was much smaller then. Most of lower Manhattan south of Fulton Street was actually underwater. The shoreline ran roughly where Greenwich Street is today, and the area where the Twin Towers stood was part of the Hudson River. Ships could sail right up to what's now the financial district. So maybe this gunboat wasn't buried at all. Maybe Manhattan was built on top of it. The vessel was likely part of the naval battles that raged around New York Harbor during the Revolution. British and colonial forces fought desperately for control of the port that would determine the fate of the entire war. Ships were sunk, scuttled, and abandoned in the heat of battle. Some sank in the shallows near shore and were gradually covered by sediment and debris. Over the decades that followed, as New York grew from a colonial port into America's greatest city, the shoreline was systematically filled in. Tons of soil, rock, and refuse were dumped into the harbor to create new land for the expanding city. The gunboat, along with who knows what else, disappeared beneath this landfill, becoming part of Manhattan's foundation. The boat is now being reconstructed at the New York State Museum in Albany, where researchers are slowly piecing together its story. Every plank, every nail, and every scrap of rope tells them something about how it was built, who might have sailed it, and what role it played in the fight for American independence. But gaps remain in the story. Whose boat was it, British or American? What kind of battles did it see? How many men lived and died aboard its decks? And most hauntingly, was this the only ship buried beneath Manhattan? Historical records from the Revolutionary War are frustratingly incomplete. Ships were often built in secrecy, sailed under false flags, and sometimes deliberately destroyed to keep them from falling into enemy hands. The documentation that does exist is scattered across archives in New York, London, and Washington, written in the chaotic scrawl of men who were fighting for their lives. What we do know is chilling. The boat shows signs of battle damage, scarred planks that could be from cannon fire and hasty repairs made under combat conditions. This vessel saw action. Real action. The kind of desperate, close-quarters naval combat that decided the fate of nations. And it's been lying beneath Manhattan's busiest streets for over 2 centuries. How many other ships lie beneath the financial district? How many other pieces of Revolutionary War history are entombed under office buildings and subway tunnels? The gunboat at Ground Zero might not be unique. It might just be the first one we bothered to save. What secrets do you think are still buried beneath Manhattan streets? Let us know in the comments. If a Revolutionary War gunboat buried beneath the World Trade Center doesn't earn a subscription, I'm not sure what will. Only about 30% of viewers subscribe to channels they enjoy. Help us share these incredible discoveries with more history lovers. The Dutchess Quarry Caves. Drive north from New York City on the Taconic Parkway, past the horse farms of Westchester County and into the rolling hills of Dutchess County, and you'll find yourself in some of the most beautiful countryside in the Northeast. Historic villages, Revolutionary War battlefields, and the kind of scenic vistas that make city folks dream about weekend houses upstate. But hidden in these peaceful hills lies evidence of something that will shatter every assumption you've ever had about how long people have been living in New York. Something so old, so ancient, that it predates the pyramids of Egypt by thousands of years. Welcome to the Dutchess Quarry Caves, where archaeologists have found proof that human beings were living in New York State over 12,000 years ago. We're talking about the end of the last ice age, when woolly mammoths still roamed North America, when the Great Lakes were just beginning to form, and when most of what we now call New York State was still emerging from beneath mile-thick glaciers. And people were here. Real people, with families and tools, and the incredible courage it took to survive in a landscape that was literally being reshaped by retreating ice. The story of the Dutchess Quarry Caves begins in the 1960s, when a limestone quarrying operation in eastern Dutchess County accidentally broke through into a system of natural caves. The quarry workers, thinking they just hit an empty cavity, were about to blast through when somebody noticed something glinting on the cave floor. They were stone tools. Thousands of them. Professional archaeologists were called in, and what they found inside those caves rewrote the textbooks on early human occupation of the Northeast. Fluted spear points, the distinctive, channel-carved projectiles used by Paleo-Indian hunters, lay scattered throughout the cave system alongside the bones of extinct animals they'd been used to kill. These weren't just any fluted points. These were some of the finest examples ever discovered, crafted with a level of skill that still impresses modern stone tool makers. Each point was individually designed, perfectly balanced, and sharp enough to penetrate the thick hide of an Ice Age mammoth or giant bison. But what were they doing in caves in Dutchess County? The answer tells a story of survival that's almost too incredible to believe. 12,000 years ago, the landscape of New York looked nothing like it does today. The ice sheets had recently retreated, leaving behind a raw, scraped terrain of exposed rock, glacial lakes, and scattered patches of tundra vegetation. The climate was harsh, unpredictable, and utterly unforgiving. Early humans survived by following herds of megafauna, giant animals that had evolved during the Ice Age and were slowly going extinct as the world warmed. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, cave bears, and saber-toothed cats roamed across a landscape that looked more like modern Alaska than modern New York. The Dutchess Quarry Caves provided shelter for small bands of hunters who were tracking these animals across the changing landscape. The caves offered protection from storms, a secure place to store supplies, and most importantly, a base camp from which they could venture out on hunting expeditions that might last for weeks. Think about the courage that is required. These weren't modern hunters with GPS devices, weather forecasts, and emergency rescue services. These were people armed with nothing but stone-tipped spears, animal hide clothing, and an intimate knowledge of survival techniques that we've completely forgotten. And they were hunting animals that could kill them without breaking a sweat. The preservation conditions in the Dutchess Quarry Caves were almost perfect. The limestone environment, stable temperature, and protection from the elements meant that organic materials survived that would have rotted away in most other sites. Archaeologists found not just stone tools, but also fragments of bone, antler, and even preserved plant materials that provided a detailed picture of what life was like during the late Pleistocene. One of the most chilling discoveries was evidence of how these early hunters processed their kills. The caves contained bone fragments from mammoths, mastodons, and other megafauna that had been systematically broken apart to extract marrow and brain tissue, high-energy foods that were crucial for survival in the harsh Ice Age environment. But there's something else in those caves that gives you pause. Human bones. Not burial remains, but scattered fragments that suggest these early New Yorkers sometimes didn't make it home from their hunting expeditions. The Ice Age was brutal, and survival was never guaranteed. What do you think it was like to be one of the first humans in New York? Can you imagine the courage it took to survive in Ice Age America? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. The technology represented by the Dutchess Quarry artifacts is almost incomprehensibly complex. Each fluted point represents hours of careful knapping, which is the process of chipping away flakes of stone to create sharp edges. The fluting technique itself is so difficult that many modern expert knappers can't reliably reproduce it. These Paleo-Indian hunters were creating stone tools that were more precisely engineered than anything else produced in North America for the next 10,000 years. They understood the structural properties of different types of stone, the physics of impact and penetration, and the aerodynamics of projectile flight. In other words, they were rocket scientists. Rocket scientists armed with stone-tipped spears, hunting animals the size of school buses in a landscape that was actively trying to kill them. The Dutchess Quarry Caves represent one of the oldest confirmed human occupation sites east of the Mississippi River. But they also represent something more profound, proof that human beings have been an integral part of New York's landscape for over 12 millennia. When you drive through Dutchess County today, past the antique shops and farm stands and weekend retreats, you're traveling through one of the longest continuously inhabited regions in North America. People have been living here, surviving here, thriving here since before the end of the Ice Age. The caves themselves are now closed to the public, protected by state regulations and private property rights. But the artifacts discovered there are preserved in museums and universities across New York State, where they continue to provide insights into the lives of our earliest neighbors. And sometimes, late at night when the wind howls through the hills of Dutchess County, you have to wonder what other caves are out there, what other secrets are hidden in the limestone beneath our feet. How many other time capsules from the Ice Age are waiting to be discovered? The Dutchess Quarry Caves prove that New York's human history extends back to the very dawn of human civilization in North America. But they also prove something else, that the people who survived the end of the Ice Age were tougher, smarter, and more resourceful than we give them credit for. They were the first New Yorkers, and they earned that title the hard way. The ancient stone serpents of Overlook Mountain. Take Route 28 west from Kingston, wind your way through the historic town of Woodstock, and head up into the Catskill Mountains. As you climb higher into the wilderness, past the summer camps and hiking trails, you'll reach Overlook Mountain. At 3,140 feet above sea level, it's not the tallest peak in the Catskills, but it might just be the most mysterious. Hidden among the dense forests near the summit lies something that shouldn't exist. Something that challenges everything we think we know about the Native Americans who lived in New York centuries before Europeans arrived. Nearly 50 stone formations, some stretching over 100 feet in length, are arranged in patterns that seem to follow astronomical alignments. These aren't random piles of rocks left by hikers or Boy Scout troops. These are stone constructions, walls, cairns, and serpentine patterns that required careful planning, precise engineering, and probably years of backbreaking labor to complete. In the 1990s, researchers using new archaeological techniques began finding evidence of extensive stone construction throughout the Catskill region. But it wasn't until detailed surveys in the early 2000s that the true scope of the Overlook Mountain site became clear. What they found was staggering. Stone walls that snake through the forest for hundreds of feet, following the natural contours of the mountainside but clearly built by human hands. Circular stone cairns are arranged in precise geometric patterns. And most mysteriously, long serpentine walls that seem to align with the summer and winter solstices, suggesting these structures had astronomical and possibly religious significance. Carbon dating of organic materials found beneath the stones suggests construction began around 1330 AD and continued until approximately 1550 AD. That places the builders squarely in the late prehistoric period, when the area was occupied by Lenape and other Algonquian-speaking tribes. But here's what makes your skin crawl. Nothing in the historical record prepared archaeologists for constructions of this scale in the Northeast. The textbook version of pre-Columbian Native American life in New York describes scattered bands of hunter-gatherers living in temporary camps. What they found at Overlook Mountain suggests something far more complex. The largest of the stone serpent walls stretches for over 100 feet through the forest, rising and falling with the terrain like a massive stone snake frozen in time. The wall is constructed from carefully fitted stones, some weighing several hundred pounds, transported from quarry sites that must have been miles away through dense mountain forest. How do you move stones that heavy through wilderness terrain without wheels, without metal tools, and without draft animals? How do you coordinate construction projects that span decades and require the labor of entire communities? The engineering challenges alone should give you pause. Building a 100-foot stone wall on level ground is difficult enough. Building one that follows the contours of a mountainside, maintaining structural integrity across steep slopes and rocky terrain, requires a level of planning and skill that most people associate with much later civilizations. But the real mystery isn't how they built the stone serpents. It's why. The astronomical alignments suggest these weren't just property boundaries or defensive walls. During the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the shadow cast by one of the main walls points directly toward specific stone cairns positioned hundreds of feet away. During the winter solstice, the shortest day, different walls and cairns align with the rising and setting sun. The builders of Overlook Mountain weren't just moving rocks around randomly, they were creating a landscape-scale calendar, a stone computer designed to track the movements of the sun and mark the changing seasons. Why would a hunter-gatherer society need such an elaborate astronomical observation system? What were they trying to measure, predict, or commemorate with these massive stone constructions? What do you think these stone serpents were really for? Religious ceremonies? Astronomical observations? Something else entirely? Let us know in the comments below. The stone serpents of Overlook Mountain remain one of New York's greatest unsolved mysteries. And until someone finds the key to unlocking their secrets, they'll continue to wind through the Catskill forests like ancient riddles waiting for the right person to come along and solve them. The geometric puzzle of Bluff Point. Drive through the heart of the Finger Lakes region, past the vineyards and rolling farmland that make this part of New York look like a postcard from Tuscany, and you'll come to Keuka Lake. Unlike the other Finger Lakes, which run straight north-south like fingers pointing toward Lake Ontario, Keuka has a distinctive Y shape that locals call the Crooked Lake. At the southern tip of one arm of this Y, on a limestone bluff overlooking the pristine waters below, sits something that has puzzled archaeologists for over a century. Welcome to the Bluff Point Stoneworks, where someone, we're still not sure who, created one of the hardest geometric stone complexes in the northeastern United States. The stoneworks covers several acres of the limestone bluff, with stone walls radiating outward from central hubs like spokes on a wheel. Circular stone enclosures, some over 30 feet in diameter, are connected by perfectly straight walls that maintain their geometric precision across hundreds of feet of uneven terrain. The entire complex seems to have been designed according to mathematical principles that required advanced planning and sophisticated understanding of surveying techniques. But here's what makes your brain hurt. We have no idea who built it, when they built it, or why. The first European settlers in the Keuka Lake area found the stoneworks already ancient, overgrown with mature trees, and covered by decades of accumulated forest debris. Local Seneca traditions mentioned the stone structures but attributed them to the old people, a vague reference that could mean earlier Native American groups, legendary figures, or even pre-human inhabitants. Early antiquarians in the 1800s speculated that the Bluff Point stoneworks might be the remains of a lost civilization, possibly connected to the mysterious mound builder cultures of the Ohio River Valley. Some even suggested connections to European or Mediterranean peoples who might have reached North America centuries before Columbus. Modern archaeology has ruled out most of the exotic theories, but it hasn't provided any definitive answers about who built the stoneworks. Carbon dating of organic materials found beneath the stone walls suggests construction sometime between 800 and 1400 AD, placing the builders in the late prehistoric period when the Finger Lakes region was occupied by Iroquoian and Algonquian-speaking tribes. But none of the known Native American groups in the area are associated with stone construction projects of this scale and complexity. The geometric precision of the Bluff Point stoneworks is what sets it apart from other prehistoric stone sites in New York. This isn't a random collection of walls and cairns built over time by different groups. This is a unified design, executed according to a master plan that required mathematical calculations and careful surveying. The main complex consists of 3 large circular enclosures, each connected to the others by straight stone walls that maintain perfect geometric relationships across the undulating terrain of the bluff. Smaller circular structures and wall segments fill in the spaces between the major elements, creating an intricate pattern that becomes more impressive the more you study it. The builders clearly understood principles of geometry, surveying, and landscape architecture that most archaeologists didn't think existed among Native American societies in the Northeast. They were working with concepts like radial symmetry, proportional relationships, and sight lines that require sophisticated mathematical thinking. But geometric precision is just one of the mysteries at Bluff Point. The stonework itself demonstrates mastery of construction techniques that seem out of place in prehistoric New York. The walls are built using a dry stone technique where carefully selected stones are fitted together without mortar, relying on gravity, friction, and precise fitting to maintain structural integrity. This is the same technique used in famous stone constructions around the world, from the ancient walls of Ireland to the terraces of Machu Picchu. But dry stone wall building requires generations of accumulated knowledge, passed down from master craftsmen to apprentices over centuries. Where did the builders of Bluff Point learn these techniques? Who taught them to select stones for maximum structural stability, to create foundations that would last for centuries, and to build walls that could withstand freeze-thaw cycles and ground movement? The limestone used in the construction comes from local sources on the bluff itself, but it's been quarried and shaped with precision that suggests sophisticated stoneworking tools. Some of the blocks show evidence of careful shaping, with flat surfaces and precisely cut angles that would be difficult to achieve with simple stone hammers. Recent analysis using 3D mapping technology has revealed even more complexity in the Bluff Point design. The circular enclosures aren't just random sizes. They follow mathematical proportions that create harmonic relationships between different parts of the complex. The spacing between walls follows geometric progressions that suggest the builders were working from a sophisticated understanding of mathematical principles. This is landscape architecture at a level that most people associate with classical civilizations like Greece or Rome. But it was built in the Finger Lakes region of New York, possibly centuries before Europeans had any idea that North America existed. What were these geometric stone complexes actually used for? That's where the mystery deepens even further. The circular enclosures show no evidence of permanent habitation, no hearths, no storage pits, and no accumulated debris from daily life. Whatever happened at Bluff Point, people weren't living there on a regular basis. The site seems to have been reserved for special purposes, special occasions, and special activities that required the geometric precision and formal layout of the stone complex. Do you think ancient Native Americans could have developed advanced engineering? Or does Bluff Point suggest influence from outside cultures? Share your thoughts in the comments. Bluff Point might represent a northern extension of these intellectual traditions, a place where knowledge of prehistoric America was applied to landscape architecture in the Finger Lakes region. But unlike sites in Central and South America, where written records and extensive oral traditions preserved at least fragments of the builder's intentions, Bluff Point remains completely silent about its creator's purposes and methods. It remains a geometric puzzle written in stone, waiting for someone smart enough or lucky enough to crack the code and understand what these ancient minds were really trying to tell us. We've explored revolutionary ships under Manhattan, Ice Age caves, and mysterious stone constructions. If these discoveries interest you but you haven't subscribed yet, you're missing. New York's landscape has witnessed more human drama than almost anywhere in North America. The stone serpents of Overlook Mountain challenge assumptions about pre-Columbian Native American mathematical and engineering capabilities. Bluff Point's geometric stoneworks demonstrate landscape architecture so complex, we're still understanding design principles. Dutchess Quarry Caves preserve Ice Age hunter evidence from when mammoths roamed the land. The Revolutionary War gunboat beneath Ground Zero reminds us that sacred spaces sit atop layers of forgotten history. What other secrets are waiting beneath the Empire State? What other time capsules are hidden in our mountains, buried under our cities, resting at the bottom of our lakes? The only way to find out is to keep asking questions, keep investigating mysteries, and keep remembering that the past is never as simple or as distant as we think it is. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and keep looking for the stories that are hiding in plain sight all around us.